Welcome everyone to another edition of the Selling Greenville podcast. I am your host, as always, Stan McCune, realtor here in Greenville, South Carolina. And I'm really excited about this episode. We're going to be talking about specific submarkets, sub-regions within the upstate, mostly within Greenville, but generally within the upstate, and looking at appreciation. There's a lot of misnomers when it comes to appreciation. I've seen some people on Facebook talking about how real estate isn't a good investment because it basically just appreciates at the rate of inflation. And there's a lot of misnomers like that that's out there. Obviously, different markets respond differently in terms of how real estate appreciates in value. But we're going to be digging into the numbers on how the Greenville market as a whole, the upstate as a whole, appreciates, and then specific regions, how specific regions are appreciating both over the past 10 years and then over the past 3 years. So I'm really excited to talk about this. We got a lot of information to cover in a short period of time. Before we dive right into all of that, just a couple of housekeeping things, and then we can get into the information that you all want to hear. First off, if you're listening to this podcast, you like it, I would appreciate any reviews, any ratings that you can give us. If you could subscribe or download the podcast, that all helps us get it out there, get it out to the masses, let people know about us, as always. And then if you need to contact me for anything, if you need a realtor, you know someone that needs a realtor, you just want to sit down for coffee once we're allowed to do that again, or whatever it might be, please feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is all there in the show notes. You can always text me, call me, email me. All that information is in the show notes, which you can look at on your phone or on your computer, wherever you're listening to this. And again, I'm available to talk whenever you want to talk. Market and what type of appreciation that we can expect to see in our market. Now, let me clarify a few things before we just kind of jump into the data. This data is courtesy of the Greater Greenville Association of Realtors. They publish charts every month, and these charts are what I have gotten this data from. Now, what we have in the upstate is we have these specific market regions, and they are given number codes, and every listing is required to put that number code in. And some of these areas that these numbers refer to don't make a whole lot of sense. So there's a number code specifically for just the very narrow part of downtown Greenville. There's one that covers kind of like the Five Forks area, but it only covers the northern part of Five Forks, doesn't cover the southern part of Five Forks. Some of these are a little out of date where they split it. They kind of drew it based on street lines. And so I'm going to try to explain to you what these different regions are and kind of help you to visualize where we're talking about. But understand that this is the data that I'm working with. Also, this data is looking at the median sales price. So just as a reminder for those of you that didn't take statistics at any point in time, which I did not, so I have to remind myself of this. Median is kind of like the middle number in a sequence. So if you have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the middle number in there, which I guess would be 4, right? 4 would be the median number if you're, I believe, off the top of my head, if you're looking at the sequence 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's not the average, but it usually ends up being pretty close to the average. So what I've done is I've taken the median sales prices from 10 years ago and also the median sales prices from 3 years ago and compared that to what the median sales price most recently is, according to the data from the Greater Greenville Association of Realtors. And we're going to see how these different areas appreciate over time. But for starters, you need to be asking yourself the question that I asked when I first started this is, what was the average? What is happening kind of market-wide in the upstate? What can we expect? How does this compare to, for instance, the inflation rates in the United States? Because obviously every year our currency is devalued, our money is devalued. We call that inflation. And so everything gets a little bit more expensive, including real estate. Real estate is impacted by inflation, but a good investment will outpace the rate of inflation. So let's talk about the average. And again, I'm not an economics major and I'm not a financial advisor. So just getting that out there. Speak to your financial advisor to get more specifics on what you should do with your money and how you should invest that. This is just for informational purposes only. All right. Greenville, the upstate as a whole. By the way, I'm looking again at the Greater Greenville Association Realtor statistics. This does include data from Anderson, Spartanburg, Lawrence, some of these other counties, but it's mostly focused on Greenville. So just keep that in mind as well. Okay, what is the upstate market as a whole doing as far as appreciation goes? The past 10 years, according to the data that I received from the GGAR, the average rate of appreciation has been about 4.76% per year for the past 10 years. If you go back the past 3 years, so how are things getting faster? Are they getting slower? So the past 10 years, the average has been 4.76. What about the past 3 years? The past 3 years has been 6.1%. So we're seeing, in general, the median sales price going up by a much larger percentage. And that's impressive too, because the way these numbers work, the percentages are more impactful. It's kind of like compounded interest. Every year, this is the percentage of increase every single year. So 6% increase on a house that is worth $180,000 is more meaningful if it's 6% later down the road on a $200,000 valued house. In other words, as we go on and on, the percent increase in appreciation actually impacts the bottom line more because it's on a higher number. 6% of 200,000 is higher than 6% of 180,000. So how does that compare to the inflation rates? Again, I'm not an economic major or anything like that, but my understanding is that the inflation in our country has averaged about 2% increase per year. So does that mean that we're doing well? Well, it means that market-wide, the past 3 years, we have tripled that. You can expect to get about 4% appreciation, at least based on the median price points. It's about 4% higher than what the inflation rates have been. That's not bad. You compare that to, for instance, the stock market. My understanding is that that's not a bad number at all, but that's just the averages. What are the markets that are doing the best? All right, so here's where it gets really interesting. There weren't any markets that averaged over 20% appreciation based on my methodology year on year, but there is one that came really close. And it's the area, and this should not come as much surprise to you, but it's the area east of Blue Ridge Drive, but west of 276, that basically comprises West Greenville, Brandon Mill, City View, and parts of Sans Souci. And that market over the past 10 years has seen the median price point go up on average per year 19.6%. Now the past 3 years, that's gone up even more. Now it's nearly 26% the past 3 years based on the data that I analyzed. So if you want to invest in property and you want to bank appreciation, 26% average year on year. Now, of course, there's a lot that goes into that. I'm not saying that your real estate is going to appreciate 26% year on year in those areas, but that is what the market in that West Greenville, Brandon Mill, City View, Sans Souci area has seen. Prices have gone up on average, the median prices that much. Now, some of this can be skewed by new construction. Obviously, we've seen some of those mills renovated and turned into kind of higher end condo type of living. That can kind of skew the numbers a little bit. Again, it's not exactly perfect in terms of appreciation, but that is a really startling number one way or the other. Not very far behind it though, at nearly 15%, is the Dunedin Judson Welcome area. So basically east of Whitehorse Road, kind of near the hospital systems, all of that. That area has appreciated the past 10 years, or we've seen the median price point go up. I have to be careful how I say this before I get in trouble. Someone tell me I'm giving off bad information. Okay, the median price point has gone up for the past 10 years, on average, 14.87%. Again, that is an unbelievable number. If you're making 14.87% on any investment, you should be very happy. And hopefully some of you have seen that happen on some of your real estate. I have seen that happen on some of my real estate and investments that I made, and I've been very happy with that. The past 3 years, though, we have seen that area jump the median price point by 31.73% per year the past 3 years, and that is the highest number on this entire list that I came up with. And so really the Dunedin Judson Welcome area, that area right now is seeing some tremendous appreciation. At least that's what it appears to be. And what's interesting is that that area has had some new construction, but a lot of that is just older homes being renovated, being flipped, being sold for a lot more. And so I'm very impressed by those numbers from that area. And that's been an area that I've personally been targeting and having my investor clients target for a while now. Now, just below that is an area that is actually a little bit surprising. So this one, the median price point has gone up 13.35% year on year for the past 10 years. And the past 3 years, it's gone up 22.23%. And this is the area down there by Donaldson Center area, and south of that, almost to the point, there's a little point where Anderson County, Abbeville County, Greenville County, and Lawrence County meet, and it's just a little bit northeast of there. If you drew a line from that area all the way up, kind of past the Donaldson Center area, that is the area that we're talking about here. So kind of a unique area, but it was obviously it's very convenient in a lot of ways to downtown Greenville, and that's a consistent theme we see here. The areas around downtown Greenville experienced the most appreciation. But Donaldson Center area has kind of been underappreciated. Actually, my first house flip I did down in that area, and I bought that house for $38,000, and it didn't need that much work. I flipped it and sold it for, if I remember correctly, for $83,000. I mean, those numbers are like nothing. This was a nice house. Well, guess what? That same house, you would get nothing close to those types of numbers for. I mean, we're talking about it would be much, much higher. That area has seen the median price point the past 3 years go up 22.23%. That's very impressive, very interesting. The next on the list is just west of that area, between Highway 25 on the east and the Saluda River on the west. So we're including what would be Gant. If you're familiar with that, you can see that on Google Maps. It specifies where Gant is. Some parts of Piedmont and Pelzer, and this one does go south all the way. This area that we're talking about, that the Greater Greenville Association of Realtors has identified, goes all the way south down to that point where all those counties that I mentioned earlier meet. That area has seen the past 10 years 10.31% increase on the median price point, and the past 3 years, 13.3%. So again, very excellent growth in that area, still in double digits for the past 10 years, 13.33% for the past 3 years. And that's an area that if you're looking to invest, again, you want to bank some appreciation, that's an area worth considering. The next on the list is an interesting one because this is the first one that has a higher appreciation over the past 10 years, year-on-year average, in terms of the median price point versus the median price point of the past 3 years. And again, not necessarily appreciation, but just the fluctuation of the median price point. So this area I would kind of call the Staunton Bridge area. It's between Whitehorse Road and between the Saluda River on the east and the west, and then between highways 123 and Interstate 85. So that's kind of the area that we're talking about. So that area has seen over the past 10 years the median price point go up per year by 9.6%, but the past 3 years 7.72%. Well, that's pretty close to the average for the entire upstate. So even though it's close to a 10% increase year on year for the past 10 years, we're seeing that slow down the past 3 years. So that's interesting. I'd have to do a lot more digging to try to figure out, and I don't want to speculate. I have some speculation. I don't want to speculate why, but that's something to consider. That area appears to be slowing down a little bit. Now, the next area on the list is one that is also unique from the standpoint of that it has higher home prices in general. So it's an area that currently the median sales price is pretty close to $300,000. So most of these that we've been looking at, the median sales prices have been kind of topping out in the low to mid 200s or maybe even the high 100,000s. This is an area that is much, much higher, and the area that I'm talking about is the Overbrook area. You might even include what I've heard some refer to as Midtown Greenville, all the way out to Pleasantburg Drive. That area for the past 10 years has seen the median price point go up 9.22% per year. And so far outpacing inflation. And that's an area that, in general, we haven't seen a ton of new construction. So I think that a lot of that we can confidently say is appreciation, is people adding value, flipping houses, doing that type of thing. And the past 3 years, it's gone up 13.19%. So if you're looking for an area that is really a great area to raise a family, an area that is convenient to everything, but isn't as expensive as downtown Greenville, isn't necessarily as transitional as some of these other areas that we've mentioned, Overbrook, Midtown Greenville, that is the area that you're that we're seeing the average and median sales prices appreciate and go up year on year really tremendously. The past 3 years, that number has gone up 13.19% per year. There's one other that is really interesting. Well, there's two others in the good category that I want to discuss that are interesting, and then one more in or kind of a general area that I want to mention is not doing so well. All right, so one that's interesting that has a disproportionate 10-year versus 3-year, we'll just call it split, 10-year versus 3-year split, is the Nicholtown, Greenville Tech, Greenville Country Club area. And this is the reverse of what we talked about before with the Staunton Bridge area. But the Nicholtown, Greenville Tech, Greenville Country Club area, the median price point from the data that I looked at has gone up year on year for the past 10 years, about 7.57%. So that's good. That's steady. That's outpacing almost by double the average market wide. But the past 3 years has gone up 16.13%. And that would make that good for, I believe that's the fourth highest on our list for the past 3 years. That's not a huge surprise. Nicholtown has really seen a big revitalization in a lot of ways. Obviously, Greenville Country Club, that's a nice area around there. So there's been a lot of investor money going into that area the past few years, and that's being reflected on those numbers. So those are a few areas to consider if you're looking for an area that you want to invest in or that you want to live in and bank some appreciation. Those are some great areas. Now, you might have noticed that I didn't really discuss any of the traditional. I don't know what to call it. The traditional middle class family areas. Unfortunately, there is, generally speaking, a need beyond that Overbrook area that I mentioned, although you have to pay to get there. But generally, you do have to be in a little bit more of a transitional neighborhood in order to achieve that appreciation. The closer you get to urban centers, which in our case, the closest thing we have to an urban center is downtown Greenville. The closer you get to there, the more transitional things can be. One street can be dramatically different from another, but that is where we see the most appreciation, because downtown Greenville, the way I see it, is just influencing those other areas in a positive way in so many different ways. But I will mention one area, and I need to hedge this, but there is one area that has seen in the past 3 years some very good appreciation that would be considered more of an area that families and that someone looking for a good school district, etc., would be interested in moving to, and that is the Five Forks area. Now, I alluded to this earlier, which is that the way the Association of Realtors splits up these areas, it doesn't include all of Five Forks. So I would call this the northern Five Forks area, but we're talking about above Woodruff Road, but below Interstate 85. And that area, over the past 10 years, hasn't seen that tremendous increase on the median price point. Over the past 10 years, we're only talking about 3.1%, but those gains have been driven primarily the past 3 years, where we've seen that increase about 10%, 10.06%, according to the numbers that I'm looking at. So that's a very interesting thing to consider. Now, that might not be appreciation, and here's why. That might be driven by new construction. Oftentimes, new construction will cost more than old construction. It's not always the case. But Five Forks, we know, has had a ton of new construction in the past few years, and so it's possible that those gains are mostly driven by the new construction. That said, when you have new construction increasing prices in an area, that does help the old construction as well. So if you're looking for an area with solid school districts, with newer construction, with a lot of things to do as a family, not necessarily near downtown Greenville, Five Forks might be an area worth considering. The numbers are looking good the past few years in Five Forks. But what about on the bad side of things? I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but there was a very consistent trend. There's actually a few markets that have basically the past 3 years not even kept up with inflation, or barely kept up with inflation. Assuming, again, that I'm correct that inflation is about roughly 2% per year. And this is the worst of the worst is the downtown Anderson area, just north of I-85, towards and with the border from downtown Anderson to the Saluda River. That area, the past 10 years has seen 3.47% increase on the median price point, but the past 3 years, 0.75%. Now that is not something that you want to see at all, and that's a very discouraging number for the Anderson area, unfortunately. And I have flipped houses in Anderson. I think that there is a way to do it down there, but you need to keep in mind that area is not seeing the type of increase on home prices that we're seeing in Greenville County. There were two other subregions in Anderson that also were kind of in a similar boat. That downtown Anderson was the worst one, but also there was a section that was the majority of Anderson County that saw over 10 years 4.14% increase on the median price point. Past 3 years, 2.94%. So that's barely above, if above, inflation. And then the West Anderson area, similarly 5.24% over the past 10 years increase on the median price point, and the past 3 years 3.57%. So if we take these numbers to just be straight appreciation of real estate, which they aren't, I've already explained that, but if we were to take that, those would not be good numbers, and those are reasons to pause when it comes to purchasing real estate in Anderson. Again, I have done it before. I help clients down in that area. There is a lot more to consider when you're buying a home than strict appreciation. But when we're talking about what the market is doing, it appears that the market down there is still kind of lagging behind Greenville in a lot of different ways. But overall, the upstate is doing very, very well. Overall, I think that you can be confident that the real estate in our area is appreciating, particularly down and near downtown Greenville. And all around downtown Greenville, those areas all around it. A little bit of caution for that Staunton Bridge area. But even so, the past 3 years being, like I said, 7.72% in that area, that's still quite good, right? If we're comparing that to the inflation rates, if we're comparing that to a lot of other investments, again, I'm not an expert in that stuff, but in my opinion, that seems pretty good. But really, the West Greenville, Brandon Mill, City View, Sans Souci area, Deneen, Judson, Welcome area, and even some of the Donaldson Center-ish area, those are the areas that are really seeing some big changes happening in terms of the sales prices, in terms of what things are selling for, and that's something that you should consider. A lot of people are buying rental properties in those areas, and what's really nice about buying a rental property is that you get, well, there's a lot of good things from that, but you get the cash flow, and then if you purchase in the right area, you also get appreciation. And I don't do my own taxes, but my accountant has let me know that there are some tax benefits that a good accountant can help you with for rental properties as well. You do have to factor in that in these areas near downtown Greenville, property taxes oftentimes will be higher. So that is a consideration as well as you're considering investing in some of these areas. But there's a lot of reasons for optimism, and I'm really excited to see these numbers, to see just how well our market has done over the past 10 years, over the past 3 years. A lot of people in this area have done very well investing in real estate, and that's something that I continue to be passionate about. I currently have 13 rental properties that either my wife and I own or that I own with some partners, and I'm hoping to be able to build that portfolio even more. These numbers made me even more confident to continue to do that. And if you have any questions about a specific area, how is a specific area doing? How are these median price points impacted in this area or that area? I'd be happy to discuss that with you. If you're interested in investing in real estate, I'd be happy to discuss some options there. Just let me know. Again, my contact information in the show notes. And until next time, stay well.